Good morning. Got a lot of stories for this week, the fourth week of November 2020. First story, three of the UK's largest energy companies have now combined to build this offshore wind superhighway to bring Scottish wind to the UK. This will be an HVDC line, high voltage DC, 2 gigawatts, scalable up to 4 gigawatts, and it'll run from two separate points in Scotland for about 270 miles along the coast, linking up to the UK, to England. Here in the US, we're grappling with what to do about our 23 gigawatts of proposed offshore wind build-out. If we build each project straight to the mainland, it's going to be a rat's nest out there with difficulty connecting all those different projects to the mainland, destabilizing the grid potentially, and also stranding future projects. So there's more and more of a notion here of building some kind of offshore grid network as well, and the FERC has had hearings on it. But figuring out who's going to build it, where it's going to get built, and then how to pay for it, under what kind of tariff structure, those are all the thorny issues. That's the rub. Speaking of offshore wind as well, Maine Governor Mills just announced this week a floating offshore wind pilot, a research project in the Gulf of Maine to be led by New England Aquaventus and also Mitsubishi's Diamond Offshore Wind and RWE Renewables, with up to a dozen floating turbines connected to the grid in southern Maine. And speaking of more floating wind, California's State Land Commission received two applications for floating offshore wind platforms off the coast of Lompoc and Vandenberg Air Force Base. The first one involves installation of 4 floating wind turbines with total 40 megawatts on semi-submersible concrete barges. And a second project has 4 12 to 15 megawatt turbines and a test barge, and these tension leg platforms that attach to the bottom of the ocean allow the platform to move with the tide a little bit, but not up and down with the waves, to keep it stable that way. And speaking of California, the California Public Utilities Commission is trying to figure out how best to integrate electric vehicles into the grid, and just opened up a rulemaking on that in response to a Senate bill that's required that the Commission adopt vehicle-to-grid integration strategies by 2030. So what they're trying to do is figure out how to use EVs, charging them at the right time, and potentially also discharging them to increase grid asset utilization, operational flexibility, avoid otherwise necessary transmission distribution upgrades, and also integrating more renewables into the system, maybe lowering the cost of electricity and creating more resilience. It's possible vehicles might be used sometime in the future to stabilize the grid when there are preemptive outages related to fires, etc. So that's what's going on there. It's kind of important for California. If we fully electrified our passenger vehicle fleet, we would use another 30% more electricity than we use today. And because California has half of the country's 1.6 million EVs in the market right now, they're going to have to get this right and get it right before anybody else, and then the rest of us can learn from that. And speaking of EVs, GM just announced that with some updates in its battery chemistry and platform engineering advances, it's increasing the range of its Ultium battery, now up to 450 miles of range for the most advanced vehicles in the fleet to come. It's also planning to roll out 30 EVs over the next 5 years, up from an original goal of 22, with some vehicles costing under $30,000. And finally, it's increasing its spending by more than a third, upping that to $27 billion in research and development and investments in plant. So GM's really jumping into the game, finally. And speaking of an entirely unrelated topic, developer Invenergy just rolled out an announcement for a 5-phase, 1,310 megawatt solar project spanning 3 counties in Texas. This would be the largest solar project in the United States to date. It has power purchase agreements, PPAs, with AT&T, 500 megawatts just with AT&T, which would be the largest PPA in this country to date. Also, Honda snapped up 200 megawatts. McDonald's grabbed another 160. The city of Bryant, Texas, took 150. Google added another 100 megawatts to its massive PPA commitment. And then other buyers included Home Depot and the cities of Denton and Garland, Texas. So lots going on in the space this week. I hope you all have a healthy and restful Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks.